The winter of 2024 came to Detroit like a beast unleashed from the depths of hell itself. The temperature had plummeted to minus 18 degrees Fahrenheit, the kind of cold that makes your lungs burn with every breath and turns the moisture in your eyes to ice crystals. Snow fell in relentless sheets, each flake sharp as broken glass, driven by winds that howled through the abandoned streets like the voices of the damned. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. In this frozen wasteland that had once been the Motor City, beneath the skeletal remains of an overpass that had seen better decades, a small figure huddled against a concrete pillar covered in graffiti and rust stains. The pillar provided little shelter, but it was all she had. Her name was Emma Katherine Morrison, and she was 14 years old. Too young to be fighting for survival in a world that had forgotten her existence. Too young to understand that sometimes the cruelest lesson life teaches is that you can do everything right and still lose everything that matters. In her numb fingers, she clutched a brown paper bag that contained her most precious possession. Not jewelry or money or photographs of happier times. Just half a loaf of day-old bread from the dumpster behind Torino's bakery. Bread that was supposed to be her only meal for the next 48 hours. Bread that meant the difference between having strength to search for warmth tomorrow and lying down in the snow to never get up again. The wind picked up, sending loose snow swirling around her, like ghosts dancing in the pale light of a distant street lamp. Emma pulled her threadbare jacket tighter around her thin shoulders, but the cold found its way through every tear in the fabric, every gap where the zipper had broken months ago. Her breath came out in small puffs that disappeared, almost instantly, as if even her warmth was abandoning her. If you believe in the power of kindness to change lives, in the strength that comes from protecting those who cannot protect themselves, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us keep these powerful true stories alive for those who still believe in second chances and the brotherhood that exists between strangers. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Compassion has no borders, and we'd love to know how far this message of hope can reach. Emma Katherine Morrison hadn't always lived under bridges and in doorways. 6 months ago, she had been just another kid in the foster care system, bouncing from home to home like a pinball in a machine nobody wanted to fix. Her real parents had died in a car accident when she was 9. A drunk driver on a rainy Tuesday night that changed everything. Her grandmother had tried to take her in, but cancer took her too, leaving Emma with nothing but a small locket that held her mother's picture and the clothes on her back. The Morrison family had no other relatives willing to take in a traumatized child, so Emma became a ward of the state. She learned quickly that temporary placement was just fancy words for nobody really wants you here. The Hendersons lasted 3 months before deciding she was too quiet and withdrawn. The Kowalskis made it 6 weeks before complaining that she didn't bond with their biological children. The Masons didn't even last a month. Then came the Reeves family. Tom and Sandra Reeves had seemed different at first. They talked about God and forgiveness, and giving Emma a real home. They had 2 children of their own, Michael, 16, and Ashley, 12. For the first few weeks, Emma dared to hope that maybe, finally, she had found people who would let her stay, but Tom Reeves had hands that wandered in the dark. Sandra Reeves had eyes that turned away when she should have been looking. And when Emma finally found the courage to tell a school counselor what was happening at home, somehow the accusations never made it past a misunderstanding and a donation to the school's athletic program. Emma tried to run away 4 times. Each time, they brought her back. Each time, Tom's hands became less careful about leaving marks where they could be seen. Each time, Sandra's indifference grew colder. The 5th time Emma ran, she made sure they would never find her again. She had learned to disappear into the city's shadows, to become invisible among the other forgotten souls who called the streets home. That was 3 months ago. 3 months of finding food in dumpsters and shelter in doorways. 3 months of learning that the world was full of people who would hurt you for no reason and others who would ignore your pain because helping was inconvenient. 3 months of growing up too fast in ways that would leave scars no one could see. But Emma had also learned something else in those 3 months. She had learned that sometimes the people society threw away were the ones with the biggest hearts. Old Charlie, who shared his cardboard with her when the rain was too heavy. Maria, who taught her which dumpsters had the best food and which alleys to avoid after dark. Even Ray, who talked to voices nobody else could hear, but always made sure Emma got a share when he found something good. The streets had taught her that kindness was rare and precious, and when you found it, you held on to it like a lifeline. They had also taught her that sometimes, if you wanted to see kindness in the world, you had to be willing to create it yourself. Emma was trying to fashion a better windbreak from some cardboard and plastic bags when she heard it. At first, it was just a low rumble in the distance, barely audible over the howling wind. But as the sound grew closer, it became unmistakable. The deep, rhythmic thunder of a motorcycle engine, working hard against the elements. The sound grew louder, more labored, and then suddenly cut out altogether. Emma froze, listening. In her experience, motorcycles meant one of two things: either trouble in the form of gangs looking for easy targets, or someone who might be willing to trade a few dollars for information about what the police were doing in the area. Either way, it usually meant danger for someone like her. But curiosity was stronger than caution, and Emma had survived this long by knowing what was happening around her. She crept to the edge of her hiding spot and peered around the concrete pillar. About 60 yards away, she could see a massive motorcycle stopped in the middle of the empty street. Steam was rising from its engine in the frigid air, and she could tell immediately what had happened. The bike had overheated, probably from being pushed too hard in the extreme cold. Beside the motorcycle, a figure was struggling. He was enormous, easily 6 feet 4 inches tall and built like a linebacker. His leather jacket was black as night, and even from this distance, Emma could see the patches and emblems that marked him as part of something she had been taught to fear. A motorcycle club. The kind of men her foster parents had whispered about in hushed tones, warning her to cross the street if she ever saw them coming. But as Emma watched, the man stumbled and fell to one knee in the snow. He tried to get back up, failed, and fell again. This time, he stayed down, his massive frame shaking not with rage or violence, but with something much more human. He was freezing to death. The man's name was Marcus Thompson, though everyone in the Death's Head Motorcycle Club knew him as Steele. At 42 years old, Steele had been riding with the club for over 20 years. He was the road captain, responsible for planning routes and ensuring the safety of the Brotherhood when they traveled together. He was also a man carrying the weight of a promise that was killing him inside. 3 days ago, Steele had received the call he had been dreading for months. His mother, Margaret Thompson, was dying. The lung cancer that had been eating away at her for 2 years had finally won, and the doctors in Milwaukee said she had days, maybe hours left. She was asking for her son, not the son who had disappointed her by choosing the motorcycle club over college. Not the son who had spent years in and out of trouble with the law. Just her boy, Marcus, who used to bring her wildflowers from the roadside and promise her he would always be good. Steele had been in Tampa when the call came, finishing business for the club that couldn't wait. But the moment he heard his mother's voice, weak and fragile on the other end of the line, nothing else mattered. He climbed on his Harley-Davidson street glide and began riding north, determined to cover the 1,200 miles between Florida and Wisconsin in record time. For 18 hours straight, Steele had pushed himself and his machine to their limits. He had stopped only for gas and caffeine, ignoring the warnings from other bikers about the weather system moving across the Midwest. His bike was built for long distances, but even the most reliable machine has its breaking point when pushed beyond reason in sub-zero temperatures. The breakdown had happened just outside Detroit, about 200 miles from his destination. The engine had started running rough, then hot, then finally seized altogether as the oil thickened in the brutal cold. Steele had coasted to a stop under the overpass, hoping to find shelter while he figured out his next move. But the cold was merciless, and Steele realized with growing alarm that he was in serious trouble. His heavy leather jacket and chaps were designed for wind protection, not Arctic survival. His boots were soaked through from walking in the snow, and he could no longer feel his feet. His hands were so numb that he couldn't operate his cell phone properly. And even if he could, who would come out in weather like this? Steele had survived 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan, where he had learned to fight and kill and carry wounded brothers to safety under enemy fire. He had faced down rival clubs in situations where backing down meant death. He had been stabbed, shot, and beaten more times than he could count. But sitting in the snow beneath that overpass, Marcus Thompson felt something he hadn't experienced since he was a child, genuine fear that he might not see another sunrise. As hypothermia began to set in, Steele's thoughts turned to his mother. Margaret Thompson was probably lying in her hospital bed right now, wondering if her son would make it home in time to say goodbye. The woman who had raised him alone after his father walked out. The woman who had never given up on him, even when he gave her every reason to. The woman who deserved so much better than to die alone because her son couldn't handle a simple motorcycle ride in the cold. Emma watched the big man struggle for several minutes, fighting with herself about what to do. Every survival instinct she had developed over the past 3 months screamed at her to stay hidden. Men like that were dangerous. Everyone knew that. They fought and drank and hurt people for fun. They were the kind of men that nice families warned their children about. But as Emma watched him grow weaker, falling twice more before finally staying down on his hands and knees in the snow, she found herself remembering things she had tried to forget. She remembered her father, David Morrison, and the night he had stopped to help a stranger whose car had broken down on the highway. The stranger had turned out to be a veteran having a PTSD episode, confused and frightened. David had spent 3 hours sitting with the man, talking him through the panic attack and calling his family to come get him. Emma, her father had told her later, sometimes the scariest-looking people are just scared themselves. And sometimes helping someone else is the only thing that makes sense in a world that doesn't make much sense at all. Her mother, Jennifer Morrison, had been the same way. Jennifer had volunteered at homeless shelters and food banks, and she always kept granola bars in her purse to give to people begging on street corners. When Emma had asked her why she did it, especially when some of the recipients looked frightening or smelled bad, Jennifer had knelt down to Emma's eye level and said something that had stuck with her ever since. Sweetheart, kindness isn't about whether someone deserves it or whether they'll appreciate it. Kindness is about who you choose to be when nobody else is watching. And I choose to be someone who helps when I can, because that's the person I want you to remember when I'm gone. Jennifer Morrison had died less than 2 years later, but her words had lived on in her daughter's heart. Even through the worst of the foster homes, even through nights when Emma's own stomach cramped with hunger, she had tried to remember what her parents had taught her about being human in an inhuman world. Standing in the snow, watching a stranger suffer, Emma felt the weight of that teaching. This man might be dangerous. Helping him might put her at risk. But he was also clearly dying, and she was possibly the only person who could save him. The math was simple. His need was greater than her fear. Emma reached into her paper bag and pulled out the bread. It was a small loaf, the kind that bakeries made for sandwiches. Day old, marked down to almost nothing because it was getting stale. To most people, it would have been barely worth the dollar she had begged for it. But to Emma, it represented 2 days of not going completely hungry. 2 days of having something to put in her stomach when the emptiness became too much to bear. She looked at the bread, then at the stranger, then back at the bread. Her stomach growled audibly, reminding her that she hadn't eaten anything substantial in over 36 hours. Her practical mind, the part of her that had learned to think like a survivor, told her to wait. Someone else would come along. Someone else would help. Someone who could afford to help. But Emma had learned something else on the streets. Sometimes someone else never comes. Taking a deep breath that burned her lungs with cold, Emma stepped out from behind the concrete pillar. Her footsteps crunched in the snow as she walked toward the fallen biker, each step taking her further from safety and closer to the unknown. The wind picked up again, sending her thin jacket flapping around her like broken wings. As she got closer, Emma could see more details about the man. His beard was thick and gray, dusted with snowflakes that had turned to ice crystals. His hands were bare, probably pulled his gloves off to try to work on the motorcycle, and his fingers were already turning, an alarming shade of blue. The patches on his leather vest told a story she couldn't fully read, but the skull and crossbones emblem was clear enough. This was not someone most people would approach voluntarily. But Emma also noticed other things. The way he was curled in on himself, trying to conserve body heat, the way his breathing was coming in short, painful gasps. The way his whole body was shaking with violent shivers that were using up what little energy he had left. She had seen hypothermia before in other street people who hadn't found shelter in time. She knew what came next if he didn't get warm soon. "Mister," Emma called out when she was still about 10 feet away. Her voice was small and uncertain, almost lost in the wind. "Are you okay, Marcus?" Steele Thompson looked up, and for a moment, Emma thought she might be hallucinating. Through the snow and the darkness, he could make out a small figure approaching him. A child, by the size and sound of her. What was a child doing out here in weather that was killing him? "Kid," Steele managed to say through chattering teeth, You need to get out of here. This ain't safe." Even dying of hypothermia, his first instinct was to protect someone more vulnerable than himself. Emma found that oddly comforting. In her experience, truly dangerous people didn't warn you away from danger. They were usually the danger. "I live here," Emma said simply, gesturing toward the overpass. "Under the bridge. And you're hurt." Steele tried to focus on her face, but his vision was getting blurry. "I'm fine, kid. Just cold. You get inside somewhere warm, okay?" "There isn't anywhere warm," Emma replied, and there was no self-pity in her voice. Just a statement of fact. "And you're not fine. You're freezing to death." She was right, and Steele knew it. He tried to reach for his phone again, but his fingers wouldn't work properly. The device slipped from his numb hands and landed in the snow, the screen going dark. "Here," Emma said, stepping closer and holding out the paper bag. "This might help." Steele looked at what she was offering and felt his heart stop. It was food, a small loaf of bread that looked like it had been someone's dinner. Someone who clearly didn't have much to spare. "Kid, I can't take your food. You need it more than I do right now," Emma said, and there was a quiet certainty in her voice that reminded Steele of his mother. "My dad used to say that food only has power when it saves someone. Otherwise, it's just bread." Steele stared at the girl for a long moment, seeing her clearly for the first time. She was tiny, probably no more than 90 pounds, wearing clothes that were too big and had seen too many winters. Her hair was dirty and tangled, her face thin with the kind of hunger that comes from weeks of not having enough. She was clearly homeless, clearly struggling, clearly in no position to be helping anyone else. And yet here she was, offering her food to a stranger who probably outweighed her by more than 100 pounds. A stranger who looked like everything society had taught her to fear. "What's your name?" Steele asked, accepting the bag with hands that shook from more than just the cold. "Emma," she said, settling down in the snow next to him. "What's yours?" "Marcus," he replied, deciding that his club name didn't matter right now. "Marcus Thompson." He opened the bag and broke off a piece of the bread. It was dry and crusty, the kind of bread that most people wouldn't think twice about throwing away. But as he ate it, feeling the carbohydrates begin to provide a tiny bit of warmth, it tasted like the finest meal he had ever eaten. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You're welcome," Emma replied. "Are you going somewhere important?" Steele almost laughed at the understatement. "Milwaukee. My mother. She's dying. Cancer. I've been riding for almost 20 hours to get to her." Emma's face changed, and Steele saw something in her eyes that he recognized. Loss. The kind of deep, personal loss that changes you forever. "I'm sorry," she said. "About your mom." "Yeah, me too." Steele took another bite of bread and studied the girl beside him. "What about you? Where's your family?" "Dead," Emma said simply. "Car accident when I was 9. Foster care after that, but..." She shrugged. as if the rest of the story was too complicated to explain. Steele felt something twist in his chest. Here was a kid who had lost everything, who was living in conditions that would break most adults, and she was sharing her food with him because he needed it more. The irony was not lost on him. He was supposed to be the tough one, the one who protected others. But in this moment, he was being protected by someone who had every reason to look out for herself first. "Emma," he said carefully, "how long have you been living out here?" 3 months, she replied. "Since October. It wasn't so bad when it was warmer, but—" She gestured at the snow around them. 3 months. She had been surviving on the streets since October, through the fall, and now into the worst winter Detroit had seen in decades. Steele had known grown men, hardened bikers, who wouldn't last 3 weeks in these conditions. And this kid had been doing it for 3 months. "Where do you sleep?" Emma pointed to a cluster of cardboard boxes and plastic sheeting behind the concrete pillar. "I built a shelter back there. It's not much, but it blocks most of the wind." Steele looked at what she was calling a shelter and felt his heart break a little. It was barely more than a lean-to made of garbage, the kind of thing that might keep the snow off you, but would do nothing against the kind of cold that was threatening to kill him right now. "Emma," he said, his voice stronger now as the bread began to work its way through his system. "You can't stay out here tonight. It's too cold. You'll freeze to death. I've made it this far," she said with a shrug that was trying to be brave but came across as heartbreaking. "Besides, where else would I go?" Steele thought about that question and realized he didn't have a good answer. Where did a 14-year-old homeless girl go in the middle of a blizzard in Detroit? The shelters were probably full. The police would just put her back in a system that had already failed her, and anyone else who might help would likely be smart enough to stay inside on a night like this. He pulled out his phone again, his fingers working a little better now, and managed to unlock the screen. He scrolled through his contacts, looking for someone who might be able to help, and then stopped at a familiar name. Thomas Tank Rodriguez, vice president of the Death's Head MC, and the closest thing Steele had to a best friend. Tank lived about 40 minutes south of Detroit, in a house with a garage full of motorcycles and a spare bedroom that had sheltered more than one person in need over the years. "Emma," Steele said, "I'm going to make a phone call, and then I'm going to ask you to trust me with something. Can you do that?" Emma looked at him for a moment, studying his face in the dim light from the distant street lamp. She had learned to read people quickly and accurately, to spot the difference between those who would help and those who would hurt. What she saw in Marcus Thompson's eyes was exhaustion, worry, and something else. Kindness. The real kind, not the fake kind that came with conditions and expectations. "Okay," she said simply. Steele dialed Tank's number, hoping his brother would answer despite the late hour and the terrible weather. The phone rang 3 times before a gravelly voice answered. "Steele? Jesus Christ, man, where are you? Do you know what time it is?" "Tank, I need your help," Steele said without preamble. "I'm stranded under the overpass on Corktown. My bike's dead, and I've got a situation here." Tank's voice immediately became more alert. "Are you hurt? Do you need medical?" "I'm okay now, but I was going down fast before I got help." "Tank, I need you to listen to me carefully. There's a 14-year-old girl out here. She's homeless, been living under this bridge for months. She just saved my life by sharing her food with me when I was hypothermic. And Tank, she can't stay out here tonight. She'll die." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Tank Rodriguez had been in the motorcycle club for over 15 years, and he had seen a lot of things in that time. But the idea of a kid living homeless in this weather was something that hit him in a place he didn't often let people see. "You sure about this, Steele? About the girl?" "Tank, she gave me her last food. Her last fucking food when she's starving herself. She's been out here for 3 months, and she's still got enough heart to help a stranger. We can't leave her out here. What do you need?" "Bring the truck and a tow strap for my bike. And Tank, bring everyone who's available. I have a feeling this is bigger than just getting my Harley running again." Tank understood. When Steele said everyone, he meant the Brotherhood. And when the Brotherhood was called, they came. No questions, no hesitation, no matter what the weather was doing outside. Give me 40 minutes, Tank said. And Steele? Keep that girl warm until we get there. After Steele hung up, Emma looked at him curiously. Who was that? My brother, Steele said. Well, not my blood brother, but my club brother. He's coming to help us. Us? Steele looked at her seriously. Emma, I want you to know something. What you did tonight. Sharing your food with me when you barely have anything yourself. That's something I'll never forget. And where I come from, when someone does something like that for you, you don't just say thank you and walk away. You make sure they're taken care of. Emma felt a flutter of something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. But hope was dangerous for someone in her situation. Hope was what led to disappointment, and disappointment could kill you on the streets. I don't need charity, she said quietly. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. This isn't charity, Steele replied. This is family taking care of family. And after what you did tonight, your family. While they waited for Tank and the others to arrive, Steele and Emma huddled together under the overpass, sharing body warmth and conversation. Steele had taken off his leather jacket and wrapped it around both of them, creating a small pocket of relative warmth in the brutal cold. Tell me about your parents, Steele said, partly to keep Emma talking and alert, and partly because he wanted to understand how someone so young had developed such a giving heart. Emma was quiet for a moment, and Steele thought she might not answer. But then she began to speak, her voice soft and distant. My dad was David Morrison. He worked construction, building houses mostly. He used to say that there was no job more important than giving people a place to call home. My mom was Jennifer Morrison. She was a nurse at Children's Hospital. She took care of kids who were really sick. Emma paused, pulling the leather jacket tighter around her shoulders. They were good people. Like, really good. They never had a lot of money, but they always found ways to help other people. My dad would fix things for elderly neighbors for free. My mom would stay late at work to read stories to kids whose parents couldn't visit. They sound like amazing people, Steele said gently. They were. And they always told me that the most important thing in life wasn't how much you had, but how much you gave. They said that kindness was the only thing that really mattered in the end. Steele thought about that as they sat in the snow. Here was a kid who had lost everything: parents, home, security, stability, and instead of becoming bitter or cruel, she had held on to the lessons her parents taught her. She had remained kind in a world that had shown her no kindness. She had remained generous when she had nothing to give. They'd be proud of you, Steele said, and he meant it. Emma's eyes filled with tears that she quickly wiped away. I hope so. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing it right, living the way they would want me to live. Emma, you gave your last food to a stranger who could have been dangerous. You risked your own safety to help someone else. I think you're doing it exactly right. They talked about other things as they waited. Steele told her about his mother, about the kind of woman who had raised him to believe in honor and loyalty even when the world seemed determined to teach him otherwise. He told her about the motorcycle club, about how it wasn't what most people thought it was. It wasn't about crime or violence or chaos. It was about brotherhood, about having people you could count on when everything else fell apart. We take care of our own, Steele explained, and we take care of people who can't take care of themselves. That's what brothers do. Emma listened and found herself thinking about something she hadn't considered in months: what it would be like to have people who cared about what happened to her, to have somewhere to belong. As they talked, Steele found himself studying this remarkable young woman, because that's what she was, he realized. Despite her age, despite her circumstances, Emma Morrison had the kind of inner strength and moral clarity that many adults never developed. She had faced loss and hardship that would have destroyed most people, and she had emerged from it with her humanity intact. Emma, he said carefully, after tonight, things are going to be different for you. I need you to know that. My brothers and I, we don't do things halfway. When we say someone is family, we mean it. I don't understand. You will, Steele said, and in the distance, they could hear the first rumble of approaching engines. The sound started as a low rumble, barely distinguishable from the wind. But as it grew closer, it became unmistakable. The deep, synchronized thunder of multiple motorcycle engines, growing louder with each passing second. Emma felt Steele tense beside her, not with fear but with anticipation. "Here they come," he said, and there was something in his voice that Emma had never heard before. Pride, love, the sound of someone who knew that help was coming and that help was bringing the kind of backup that would change everything. The first headlight appeared around the bend in the road, cutting through the snow like a beacon. Then another, then 10 more. Then so many that Emma lost count. A convoy of lights stretching back into the darkness like a river of stars. One by one, they pulled up under the overpass. Massive motorcycles with riders who looked like they had been carved from stone and leather. Men with beards and tattoos and patches that told stories of roads traveled and bonds forged in fire. They dismounted in unison, their boots hitting the pavement with the sound of an army arriving for battle. But there was no battle here. Only a brother in need and a child who had shown that kindness still existed in the world. The first man to approach was enormous, easily as big as Steele, but with graying temples and eyes that had seen everything and been surprised by none of it. His patch read, "Tank," and when he looked at Steele, the relief on his face was obvious. "Jesus, Steele, you look like hell," Tank said, clapping his brother on the shoulder. "You okay?" "I am now," Steele replied, getting to his feet and helping Emma up beside him. "Tank, this is Emma. Emma, this is Tank. He's the vice president of our club." Tank looked down at Emma, and she saw something in his eyes that she hadn't expected. Gentleness. Respect. The way you look at someone who has earned your admiration. "Emma," Tank said, his voice surprisingly soft for such a large man. "Steele told me what you did, sharing your food with him when he was dying. That's not something most people would do. It's what anyone should do," Emma said simply. Tank exchanged a look with Steele. "Steele, you were right. This one's special." Behind Tank, the other bikers had formed a semicircle. Emma counted at least 30 men, all of them looking at her with expressions that ranged from curiosity to something that looked almost like awe. These were hard men, she could tell. Men who had lived rough lives and made difficult choices. But in their eyes, she saw something she recognized from her parents' faces. The look of people who understood the value of genuine goodness. One of the bikers, a man with a gray beard and eyes like winter, stepped forward. His patch read, "Bones," and when he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being listened to. "Little sister," Bones said, "we need to talk about your living situation. My what? Where you sleep, where you eat, how you're surviving out here." Bones gestured at the cardboard shelter behind the pillar. "Because what you've got here, this isn't sustainable. Not in this weather." "I'm fine," Emma said automatically, the defensive response that had kept her safe for months. "No, you're not," said another biker, this one with diesel on his patch. "No one's fine living like this. Especially not a kid." Steele put a hand on Emma's shoulder. "Emma, remember what I said about family taking care of family?" Emma nodded. "Well, you're looking at your family now. All of us. And we don't let family freeze to death under bridges." Tank stepped back and gestured for several of the other bikers to join him in a quiet conversation. Emma watched as they huddled together, speaking in low voices, punctuated by occasional glances in her direction. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could see the intensity of their discussion. "What are they talking about?" she asked Steele. "They're figuring out how to help you," Steele replied. "And trust me, when these guys decide to help someone, they don't mess around." After several minutes, Tank returned to where Steele and Emma were standing. Behind him, the other bikers had spread out and were already beginning to work. Some were examining Steele's motorcycle. Others were setting up portable heaters they had brought in one of the trucks. Still others were unloading boxes and bags from various vehicles. "Emma," Tank said, "we've got a proposition for you. But first, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Do you have any family? Anyone at all who might be looking for you or worrying about you?" Emma shook her head. No one. What about the foster care system? Are they actively searching for you? They stopped looking after the first month, Emma said bitterly. Too many other kids to worry about, I guess. Tank nodded grimly. He had suspected as much. The system was overwhelmed and underfunded, and teenage runaways often fell through the cracks, especially when they didn't want to be found. Okay, here's what we're thinking. You can't stay out here. That's not negotiable. This weather will kill you, and we're not going to let that happen. So you have two choices. Emma felt her chest tighten. In her experience, choices offered by adults usually weren't really choices at all. Choice 1, Tank continued. We take you to a shelter or call social services, and you go back into the system. You'll be warm and fed, but you'll be back where you started, bouncing from home to home until you age out. Emma's face went pale. The thought of going back to foster care, of potentially ending up with another family like the Reeves, made her stomach turn. Choice 2, Tank said, and his voice became gentler. You come with us. You become part of our family. We'll make sure you have a place to live, food to eat, clothes to wear, and people who care about what happens to you. But Emma, you need to understand what that means. When we say family, we mean it. Forever, no matter what. Emma stared at him, not sure she had heard correctly. You want me to live with you? Not with me specifically, Tank said, but with the Brotherhood. We've got brothers with wives and kids, brothers with spare rooms, brothers who know how to take care of people. You'd never be alone again, and you'd never go hungry again. But why? Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why would you do that for me? Steele answered that question. Because you saved my life. Because you showed kindness when you had every reason to be selfish. Because you're the kind of person who makes the world better just by being in it. And because that's what family does. Emma felt tears starting to fall, and she didn't try to stop them. For 3 months, she had told herself that she was strong enough to make it on her own, that she didn't need anyone else. That, depending on people, only led to disappointment and pain. But standing here surrounded by these unlikely guardians, feeling the warmth from their portable heaters and seeing the genuine care in their eyes, she realized that she had been lying to herself. She did need people. She needed to belong somewhere. She needed to matter to someone. What if you change your minds? She asked, voicing her deepest fear. What if I do something wrong? Or you decide I'm too much trouble? Bones stepped forward and knelt down so he was at eye level with her. Little sister, I've been in this club for 23 years. In that time, I've seen brothers make mistakes, get arrested, lose jobs, struggle with addiction, go through divorces, face every kind of crisis you can imagine. And you know what? We've never abandoned a single one of them. Family means family, through good times and bad times. Forever. You're one of us now, added Diesel. And we take care of our own. Emma looked around at the faces surrounding her. A few hours ago, these men would have terrified her. Everything about them screamed danger: their size, their tattoos, their leather cuts with their ominous patches. But now, in their eyes, she saw something that had been missing from her life for so long she had forgotten what it felt like. She saw home. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, yes. I'll be part of your family. The cheer that went up from the assembled bikers was loud enough to wake the dead. Tank scooped Emma up in a bear hug that lifted her feet off the ground, while Steele grinned so widely that his face hurt. The other brothers crowded around, each one wanting to welcome their newest family member personally. All right, boys, let's get to work, Tank announced. Bones, call your wife and tell her she's about to have a house guest. Diesel, get on the horn with the others back home. We're going to need clothes, school supplies, the works. Ghost, you and Spider start loading up Steele's bike. We're getting everyone out of this cold. Emma watched in amazement as the Brotherhood sprang into action with military precision. Within minutes, they had packed up her meager belongings, though Tank insisted that everything would be replaced with better items and loaded Steele's motorcycle onto a trailer. Portable heaters were packed away, and vehicles were warmed up and ready to go. But before they left, Steele made one more phone call. Mom, he said when the hospital phone was answered. Mom, it's Marcus. I'm okay, and I'm going to be there by morning. But Mom, I need to tell you something amazing that happened tonight. Emma listened as Steele told his dying mother about the homeless girl who had shared her last bread with a freezing stranger. She heard Margaret Thompson's voice through the phone, weak but clear, asking to speak to that angel of a child. "Hello, Mrs. Thompson," Emma said shyly when Steele handed her the phone. "Oh, sweetheart," came the soft reply. "Thank you. Thank you for saving my boy. He's all I have left in this world, and you gave him back to me." "He would have done the same for me," Emma said, and she meant it. "Yes, he would have, because I raised him to be good, just like someone raised you to be good. Your parents would be so proud of you, honey." Emma's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of something she hadn't felt in months. Joy. 20 minutes later, a convoy of motorcycles and trucks pulled away from the overpass, leaving behind only tire tracks in the snow and a cardboard shelter that would never house another homeless child. Emma rode in Tank's heated pickup truck, wrapped in a blanket and sipping hot coffee from a thermos that one of the bikers' wives had sent along. In the side mirror, she could see the line of motorcycles following behind them, their headlights creating a river of light in the darkness. Steele was riding in the truck with his bike, but the others had insisted on escorting their newest family member home. "Where are we going?" Emma asked Tank. "My brother Bones' house," Tank replied. "He and his wife Linda have 3 kids of their own, and Linda's been wanting a daughter for years. She's probably already setting up the guest room and planning a shopping trip for tomorrow. She doesn't even know me." "Doesn't matter. You're family now, and Linda treats family like gold. Besides, Steele told us how you took care of him, and that's all any of us need to know about what kind of person you are." Emma settled back into the warm seat and watched the city pass by outside the window. For the first time in months, she wasn't cold. For the first time in years, she wasn't alone. And for the first time since her parents died, she felt like she might actually have a future worth looking forward to. "Tank?" she said quietly. "Yeah, little sister? Thank you. All of you. I don't know how to. I can't ever repay Emma." Tank interrupted gently. "You already did repay us. You took care of our brother when he needed it most. You showed kindness when you had every reason to be selfish. You proved that there's still good in this world. That's worth more than money or favors or anything else we could ask for." 6 months later, Emma Morrison Rodriguez, Tank had insisted she take his family name, stood in front of Lincoln High School wearing new clothes, carrying new books, and sporting a gold chain around her neck with a small pendant. The pendant was the Death's Head MC logo, marking her as family to anyone who knew what it meant. She had gained 20 pounds of healthy weight. Her hair was clean and shiny, and her eyes held a light that hadn't been there during those dark months on the streets. But more importantly, she had gained something that couldn't be measured in pounds or seen in mirrors. She had gained a future. Linda Bones had indeed treated her like the daughter she'd always wanted, and Emma found herself part of a family that included not just Linda and Bones and their 3 children, but an extended network of motorcycle club members and their families, who all considered her their responsibility and their joy. She was excelling in school, having thrown herself into her studies with the determination of someone who knew what it was like to have nothing and was grateful for every opportunity. Her teachers described her as one of the most compassionate students they had ever encountered, always willing to help struggling classmates, and always standing up for kids who were being bullied. But perhaps most importantly, Emma had learned that the lessons her parents taught her about kindness, about helping others, about being the good in a world that sometimes forgot what its good looked like weren't just idealistic dreams. They were practical truths that could change lives and create families and turn strangers into brothers and sisters. Steele had made it to Milwaukee in time to say goodbye to his mother. Margaret Thompson had passed away peacefully 2 days later, but not before meeting Emma via video call and telling her that she had raised her son to recognize angels when he met them. She had also made Emma promise to take care of Marcus the way he would take care of her, with loyalty, love, and the unshakable bond of family. On this particular morning, as Emma walked into school surrounded by friends who had no idea that 6 months earlier she had been homeless and starving, she felt her phone buzz with a text message. It was from Steele, who had become something between a big brother and a father figure to her. Proud of you, little sister. Your parents would be proud too. See you at the barbecue on Sunday. The whole family will be there. Emma smiled and typed back. Wouldn't miss it. Family means family, right? Forever and always, came the immediate reply. As she walked into her first class of the day, Emma thought about that snowy night 6 months ago when she had made the decision to share her last bread with a freezing stranger. She had thought she was just helping someone who needed help. She had no idea that she was saving not just Steele's life, but her own. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest miracles. Sometimes helping a stranger means finding your family. And sometimes, when you give away the last thing you have, you receive everything you never knew you needed. In the hallways of Lincoln High School, other students might have seen just another teenager heading to class. But Emma Morrison Rodriguez knew the truth. She was living proof that angels don't always have wings. Sometimes they have leather cuts and Harley Davidsons and hearts big enough to save lost children and turn them into family. The Brotherhood had taught her that strength isn't about what you can take, it's about what you're willing to give. And love isn't about blood or paperwork or legal guardianship. It's about choosing to be there for someone, no matter what, forever and always. Emma had given Steele her bread on the coldest night of the year. In return, she had received a warmth that would last the rest of her life. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us keep stories of courage, compassion, and unexpected family alive for everyone who believes that kindness still matters in this world. Before you go, tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were Emma that night? Because sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change everything. Sometimes helping a stranger means finding your home. And sometimes, when you think you're saving someone else, you end up saving yourself. Remember, family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about choosing to love someone enough to share your last piece of bread in the middle of a blizzard. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change two lives forever. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.